Okay, here we are. We're live. It's Monday. Wow. Huh. Well, the weekend's over. I'm relieved about that. And now we begin another week, and I have the joy of beginning that week with Gauri Khandekar, who joins us by Skype audio from FRIDE in Brussels. And we call this, of course, you all know, we call this Midnight in Brussels. Hi, Gauri.
Hi, Jay. Thank you for having me.
Well, I didn't know what to call this show, so I called it Bailing Out Greece, Troisième.
Very apt. Very apt. Perfect title. Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but yeah, it's quite apt.
Yeah, so I mean, in the morning paper here, in the Advertiser, I pulled it out for you. The Honolulu Star Advertiser, a big article through the Associated Press is Eurozone reaches bailout deal with Greece. Well, I guess just from the headline of it, it sounds pretty good. But then you read further and you realize that the deal's not by any means done. Sort of like the Iran deal. If we have time, I want to talk to you about that too. But it's like this is a good headline, makes you feel that maybe Angela Merkel is flexible enough, and Alexis Tsipras, he's flexible enough. But query, is this really a done deal? That's my question to you for those who would drill down a little deeper.
Jay, I mean, the question here actually is, should there be a deal or not, And that's the big kind of dilemma here. Should there be a Greece exit from the Eurozone, or a Grexit rather, as it's monikered now, or should it have another bailout, which means more austerity for the Greek people who really are up to their necks with austerity and they don't want any more. The bailout also means more instability for the Eurozone, because the previous bailouts have not solved the Greek problem up till now. And it also means a very unstable euro currency, and I know because I'm personally losing my money here. So on the one hand, the deal, it's not going to solve problems overnight, but it is a solution, and it's basically what the Europeans think is the solution to the Greek crisis. On the other hand, you have a Grexit, and with the Grexit would come financial autonomy for Greece. Greece would be able to reintroduce its currency, the drachma. It would be able to devalue the currency, and that would boost exports. But also, it would be able to print more, if it wants liquidity. So, for the moment, Greece is not able to do that. And the Eurozone, which is a group of 19 European Union member states, so the EU has 28 member states, but the Eurozone has 19 countries, and these 19 countries have the euro as their currency. And these countries, when they form this Eurozone, they don't have the same fiscal policies. They have the same monetary policies, so it's not a real fiscal union. So you cannot really manage your currencies well. And you have very different economies. You have extremely rich economies, but those that are very poor as well, and they're not doing so good now, especially now like Greece. And when you discuss things about the currency, you're discussing it at 19 heads of state and government. And being a head of state and government is very different from being, for example, a governor, You have your national sovereignty at heart. And here at the EU, it's all about leaving your sovereignty. And they don't want to. So here's the problem. And what we're seeing here, I mean, the Greece deal or Grexit, but all of it, behind all of it, I mean, personally, I think that a Grexit would have been much better. But here in Europe, it's a much more emotional issue than a pragmatic issue. It's emotional, political. They see a Grexit as the end of the Euro project, as the end of the EU, and it's, Greece is the cradle of European civilization, and we cannot let it go out, and even if it's a temporary Grexit. So it's more emotional than anything.
I realize this was such an interesting analysis because, you're flying in the face of so much opinion in Europe, and you know what? It's very provocative to have the, you know, it would work over time. Don't you think it would work? So Greece would be a quieter place. Okay, you know, a friend of mine I went to law school with, when he graduated, he went to Paris, and with another of our classmates, he opened up a law firm in Paris. Well, he loved Greece. He went to Greece every time he had a chance. He liked the islands there. He'd take his family there. It was like the perfect community for him to take vacation. And part of that was because it was sort of slow. and the food was good.
Oh, the food is great. The islands are even more beautiful.
So, you know, maybe Greece could return to an older time. You know, over the July 4th weekend, I went to a small town in the Big Island. Havi is the name. And you know, I found this was something very satisfying about being back behind the curve, you know, behind in another time.
Yeah.
And that's what would happen to Greece. It wouldn't be so terrible, would it?
Yes, you're so right. You know, I published an article last Thursday in the EU Observer. So I will tweet it to ThinkTech Hawaii, and then you can maybe retweet it for your viewers. And I argued basically that, you know, and you won't believe it, but I think I was the only one here in Europe to argue that, because, you know, I see it from the outside. I'm an outsider as well. And everybody I've met, all their arguments are, oh, well, no, but it's Greece. So it's an emotional argument for them, and they fear that it could lead to a precedent. And my argument is, why should it automatically be leading to a precedent, you know? And if it's a precedent, it could be a good one. For the moment, it would be pragmatic for the Greeks to leave this, you know, uncertainty, this kind of, as I say, a humiliation, basically. There's no growth. Greece is taking on more debt, and as the former finance minister Varoufakis called it, it's a fiscal waterboarding for Greece. You know, it's a debt burden, and he's right to a certain extent. I mean, Greece should be allowed to have that financial autonomy to basically free its currency, like you said, from this fast pace or a very different pace, and start a more easy, relaxed kind of market-based economy. I completely agree.
I love the idea. I think it's very provocative. You know, and on the other side of it, you know, it's not that Humpty Dumpty is going to fall apart. It's not that you know that all of Europe is going to be in shambles. Somehow Europe will survive. Greece has been only a sort of marginal player anyway. It's not that this is going to have profound effect on Germany and France and all. They'll manage. And maybe it will have them look introspectively, you know, into new ideas, new designs to fashion the relationship in a way where this won't be catching, where the relationship will be actually more nutritious among them without Greece. Actually, that should happen anyway. But I certainly totally agree with you. And what an interesting idea. And I will put that article up. Let's see what kind of traction we can get on that here and elsewhere.
Yeah. You know, Jay, you're right. Greece is just 2% of the Eurozone economy. 2% is not very much. And other economies are doing much, much better, you know. I mean, France and Germany are growing even if they're growing at 0.6 and 0.3% respectively, they are growing. The Eurozone as a whole is growing as well. So it's not a catastrophe. I mean, that's what I've been explaining to people around here. Actually, my views are also shared by the German finance minister, Wolfgang Schäuble.
You're in good company.
And he actually proposed that Greece should have this temporary exit for 5 years. And this Friday morning, I was looking at the papers, the news, and everybody saying, what is this temporary Brexit? And I was like, well, think of it as a quarantine, you know? And a quarantine can be temporary. And it would not affect the EU economy at all in that sense. You know, I think it would be positive. The image it would give outside of the EU is that, well, the Eurozone is taking charge, there are consequences, and we have a plan in mind. but for the moment, everybody comes out and and most of the news in the media comes from Europe, where it's a hugely emotional issue, and everybody here says, "Oh no, it's a catastrophe." And next morning, you see all the markets tumbling, because well, they get it from Europe, and all the Europeans are so, moved about it.
It's true. I mean, when things were going south last week, I said, "Oh wow, the American market is going to do such a nosedive on this. It's going to do 300 points or worse." Because we're connected at the hip to Europe, and Europe is connected to Greece. No such thing. It all was fine, and it's fine now. And I haven't looked at it today, but I don't think there's really anything. In fact, this article would make for a slightly better market. So I think your point is really, really well taken. But I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
That one of the elements in this Associated Press article is that they have to go back by Wednesday, I think. And I love these deadlines everywhere, deadlines. And it sounds so much like the Iran agreement or non-agreement. So they have to go back by Wednesday, and they have to do something in the Greek parliament, I think it is, and come up with terms that would be consistent with the demand for austerity. Okay, so query, are they going to be able to do that? It's been really problematic in the past. And I suppose, too, there's public opinion among people in Greece, and not everybody likes austerity. Some of them may feel exactly the way you just expressed, and maybe don't want that anymore, and they've had enough of it. I mean, you heard that on the streets, all through the election campaign over that vote. And so we're not sure that this is going to stick anyway. You and I could be having this conversation again and again. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I was just thinking before we started, the first time we spoke about, the crisis, but also when Tsipras was elected, And let me say one thing, to also explain to perhaps your listeners who don't follow the Greek crisis so much. The current party, the Syriza party, is an anti-austerity party. They don't want more austerity, and that's the mandate they've been elected with. And most of them are called, ex-college protesters in a way. And that's it. That's what they were. Even Tsipras was. He's very young. He's around 40, but he was a street protester as a student. So they're an anti-austerity party. The Greeks at the moment are kind of confused. Or well, they have a clear idea. In that sense, is they want to stay in the Eurozone. They want the Euro, but they don't want more austerity. And you can't have both, I mean, it's either Euro with austerity or no Euro. And that's something that the Greeks are going to have to understand. Now, the sequence of events was that last Sunday you had a referendum in Greece. Well, we spoke about it, and they said, do you want this European bailout package which comes with more austerity? They put it out to the public. Of course, the public gave them a resounding oshi or a no vote, 63%. And that basically was used by Tsipras as a negotiating tool to their European counterparts to say that, look, our people do not want more austerity. We don't want more austerity. But it's not worked because, the Germans are extremely pragmatic. And now they seem to have had enough. And this week, you had this yesterday here, Sunday here in Brussels, all night. And, my neighborhood was also closed in that sense because I live close to the institutions. They had an all-night meeting where they were discussing exactly the terms of the bailout, and around 6 a.m. in the morning, there was almost a Grexit, until the president of the council, Donald Tusk, said, when Tsipras and Merkel were leaving, they said, you cannot leave the door. And he made them negotiate more. So they were negotiating until 9 a.m., all-night negotiations. And they finally struck a deal which really goes against the referendum and all what Greek people have wanted. and it really goes into more austerity, more VAT taxes, more taxes for the islands. And this is not what Tsipras's party was elected to get, you know.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to now pass it through the Greek parliament.
Yeah.
And that remains kind of a tricky issue.
Tricky issue. Okay, we're going to take 1 minute to just consider how tricky that might be, and then we'll come back and articulate the problems going forward about whether this can stick, and you know, whether the Greek people will accept it, and whether the legislature, the whole thing becomes political, I'm sure. Let's take 1 minute and recoup, and we'll be right back. Gauri Khandekar in Brussels, midnight in Brussels. We'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Jim Sean, and I'm host of a show called Education Movers, Shakers, and Reformers. Each week, live streaming at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii, we interview people who have special insights into education, from early education through K-12, all the way through higher education and beyond. Both public and private are areas we're interested in. We dig deeper. We try to find out what it's really like to be involved in making change, advocating for it, how you reform, what people's philosophies are in reforming it. As I said, we're live streaming every Wednesday at noon on ThinkTech Hawaii. And later on, you can find these interviews on YouTube and on the Hawaii Educational Policy Center website. We hope you join us as many times as possible. Aloha.
Okay, we're into our second segment. We are live. We are talking with Gauri Khandekar in Brussels, midnight in Brussels. We are so appreciative that she joins us at this hour. But you know what? It doesn't seem like midnight, because you are very attentive on this issue. You're all worked up over it.
Thank you. I think all of Brussels is going on that way at the moment, because there's so many meetings going on around here.
Well, you know, just a moment on that, Gauri. It seems to me, you know, when we first started talking, I wasn't nearly as aware of it as I am now, but it seems to me that Brussels has emerged more than before as the center of European economics, the center of this kind of thing. And maybe it's the Greek problem that has somehow elevated Brussels. I don't know why. Am I right? Am I making a wild guess here? What do you think?
You know, I think you're right in one way. Well, Brussels always was the center for Europe in that sense, right? For the EU and its politics. But ever since the financial crisis and people got to know of the Eurozone and the threat it can pose, since then, I mean, because all meetings have always taken place in Brussels, it's drawn more attention. But you know, I just wanted to kind of use your medium also to convey to your viewers or any of the news channels, the market people that might be there, is that, you know, I don't think it's a huge problem, the Greek crisis. It's not going to, it should not be impacting markets this much, you know? I mean, it's ridiculous in that sense. It's not even, I think it's not even Connecticut size. So
It's a slow news day, that's what. Anyway, so, you know, now, this NPR article suggested that the Greek had a kind of national tendency not to pay bills and to not work that hard, and to have a kind of the siesta life during the work days, which happens in other places in Europe too, I know. And as a result, you know, they were not realistic about, you know, the economics of being in the EU in the first place. And B, they don't know what it means to have both austerity and taxes at the same time. I'm not sure that anybody knows how to deal with austerity and taxes at the same time. Where do you get the money if you're being austere in the first place? And the question is, you know, is this going to work with them? I mean, with the people who showed up in the squares of Athens, and you know, who elected Tsipras in the first place. Are they going to tolerate more austerity, or are they going to go south, you know, in like 90 days?
You the Greeks have been living far beyond their means. I mean, retirement was at around 50 or 53 years of age. I mean, you would retire with your salary by then, and then you had and you had 2/3 of your salary as, your retirement age. And it's quite surprising that they continue this lifestyle well beyond their means. They took on more debt, and people got used to it. Today, with all the cuts, the Greeks are still getting 1,000 euros per month as pension, which is in today's prices, I mean, the value the same as dollars in a way.
Well, it's 1,200 American dollars, and that's not 1,000 euros a month.
Yeah, now it's around $1,000 per month as pension.
So that's pretty good, and that's not too far off the American Social Security for a lot of people, or better.
Exactly, but they're not very happy because this is already a figure that is really watered down. Slovakia, on the other hand, has pensions of around 300 euros or $300, and it's also not that. I don't think the size is much bigger or smaller than Greece. It's just people have gotten used to this lifestyle. They have to know that their country is in trouble, and I know austerity is not good, but you cannot do any other way. It's either the hard work or it's either austerity, but you cannot live an artificial life. And I think the rise of Asian countries like China, like India, or any other countries, I think they've really put much more light on hard work and and how success comes about, and you just cannot have an artificial lifestyle. You just have to work for it, and that's it.
Well, there is the possibility, and I don't know if I were Alexis Tsipras, I would have this in the back of my mind. This is like the mouse that roared. So now 3 times they've had a big infusion of cash from the EU. And on no occasion have they repaid those advances. So it kind of gets you into a rhythm. So suppose it doesn't work, and the 50 billion, just whoop, goes spent, and it's not repaid. And here we are again in, I don't know how long it would be, but say within 6 months, and we're back again. And Angela Merkel is probably going to feel the same way about keeping them. The powers that be, aside from you and me, the powers that be are going to still feel it's better to keep them in the union. So out comes the checkbook again. and you almost think that down deep in the strategy here it includes that possibility. That's the model. You lend it to us, we spend it, and then we come back and ask you for more. Works like a charm.
I don't think they realize it. I don't think they realize it here, honestly. Well, I think this is probably one of the last packages. I would think so. I mean, they've now asked for, they're getting much more money than they had originally asked for. So that's a win for Tsipras.
Well, he was actually under requesting, right? He was underestimating his own need, and they pointed out to him that if he undercapitalized himself, he would be back for more. So they gave him enough to.
He negotiated more. He had asked for more.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah. This is because he kind of balanced the austerity for more bailout money and more time to give it back. So that's his kind of so he has that. I'm telling you, the negotiations are so tricky here, it's hard to follow. But, but now, henceforth, I mean, it's going to be worse off for Greece in that sense because the IMF is going to play a much more hands-on role in terms of looking at the reforms and also the Eurozone and its partners. So, really, that's going to be one aspect where they're going to be there and really see the changes go through and try to make sure that, the money is spent well. I mean, it's going to go off to pay pensions or keep the banks running anyways, that Greece is put on a path of growth, and that the economy stays on track, and that's really their kind of foolproof plan. But I think you can never have foolproof plans. Something can always go wrong, and I think it's a matter of, kind of expecting the unexpected also, and that element, I don't see it here.
Well, if you were Tsipras and in charge of Greece, how would you build the economy? I mean, they don't have Silicon Valley. It's not like they're going to develop intellectual property or build cars. How would you do that? Quickly send public relations press releases to the U.S. and tell them that we have to have more tourism. Come now, cheap. How would you build the economy?
I was just saying to my colleague, thank God I'm not Tsipras. Thank you for putting that question to me. Well, I tweeted today that, I really admire that guy just because he's still there and he's taking the responsibility.
Yes.
And he's really getting battered in the EU Council, The 19 partners breathing down your necks and lecturing you, and, it's not a nice place to be in as Greece. But what I think I would do really is to default first, file for bankruptcy, start from zero. No, honestly, to have like hundreds of billions of euros worth of loans and debt to begin at minus, and then go your way up, but then claw up with people breathing down your neck. I wouldn't do that. It's either, like we say, it's a frying pan or a valley, where do you jump? So I personally, I would pick the Grexit and just file for bankruptcy saying, sorry, I don't have the money to give you. I don't want more debt. Introduce my own currency. Like you said, do a PR campaign on, whatever, tourism, food, or whatever, get your markets working, get your partners to come and invest, and, get the Asian countries to come and invest as well, and kind of use the European economies, European friends to say, hey, send your tourists here, or, you should trade more with us. And I think that would be my plan.
Come to exotic old Greece. And we'll give you a good exchange rate on the drachmas.
Yeah, definitely.
So, one thing that came up, in fact, one of our other commentators was suggesting there was a letter recently signed by a number of statesmen to Angela Merkel, suggesting that she ought to simply forgive a lot of this debt, give them a chance to get a leg up on it, to feel better, to feel that it's somehow resolved. So what about that? You think that EU should forgive them, absolutely outright forgive them, at least a part of their outstanding debt?
No, I don't think they can do that. For one, the public opinion is not in favor. And here in Europe, public opinion really matters, The second bit is, I don't think the other countries would like that. For example, Portugal, Ireland, Spain, Italy, they've all been through almost the same thing that Greece has. And they've done the reforms, they've swallowed the bitter pill, and they've come out much better, They're all registering growth in a way. At least Ireland has. And they say it's not fair, then why not, why didn't somebody give them a break? And I think it's also not fair in that sense, and I don't think they would get this haircut that they have been asking for. On the other hand, 16 countries in the Eurozone out of the 19 countries, other than Germany. So in total, you have 17 countries were rooting for a Grexit. The Finnish government also said, well, the Finnish extreme right party, which is a coalition member, they said that if there's no Grexit, they would pull out of the coalition, so you would have new elections in Finland. So it's quite problematic, and in terms of like the haircut or just forgetting the debt, I honestly I don't think that would be so much easier to obtain, given that everything here goes on consensus.
Yeah. Okay, so here we are. We're actually going to talk about something else after this next coming break, but I wanted to ask you one last question about Greece. And that is what, here we are. We've seen, years of this. And now recently, in a very intense form, months of it. And my question to you is, what have we learned? What has this told us and told everybody about how things work in Europe with the EU, with Greece, and anybody else who can't pay the bill? How firm is the Eurozone? How firm going forward? Are we in better shape or worse shape because of this experience?
Jay, what I've learned, and this is really also one of the biggest points of my article, is that European leaders need to really learn how to talk to the world. When they talk amongst themselves, they're discussing in a very heated manner, and this is not the message you need to convey. It's not a very responsible way of behaving internationally, because what they say, what they utter, and there are really 100 people that have opinions here, affects, global economies, and I think the world is getting tired of that. And what's more important now is the Chinese financial market crash in a way. But yeah, I just think that Europeans finally need to learn how to communicate with the rest of the world with one voice, and really an emotion-free, pragmatic opinion, and not just scaring everybody for an economy that is, 0.00 something percent of the global economy. So that's the biggest. But yeah, these bailout packages have been happening for the last 5 years, and they're going to go on now as it seems, and the saga continues. So.
So now your article, I'm so sorry, I had the link, but I didn't open it up. Your article is a FRIDE article, or is it a Gauri Khandekar article?
Well, it's published on EU Observer, so it's one of the leading outlets for European news, and they published it as an op-ed. So I've also recently joined as Director Europe, a think tank called Global Relations Forum, and so I published through them. And it's the article was published with them. I'll tweet it so you and everybody can have a look.
Okay, well, I will post it on our global newsletter for sure. But I'd like to congratulate you. I congratulate you on the article and on being a member of the forum. That's great. And I know that this is due, at least in part, to your repeated appearances here on ThinkTech.
Definitely, for sure.
We'll take a minute now, and when we come back, I'd like to talk to you about Iran, another great agreement working to the middle of the night. We'll be right back. It's Gauri Khandekar, FRIDE Institute. We'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is PJ, and I'm the host of Hawaii Sports Update. I am very interested in local sports, and that's why I host the Hawaii Sports Update show. I bring in guests from Hawaii, I bring in guests from UH, I bring in guests from the community, I bring in big names, I bring in small names, I bring in all names that are community related and doing positive things, sports related in the community. Come join me every Tuesday at 1 p.m. here on Hawaii Sports Update. You can also join me on my golf tournament, the first annual PJ Sports Radio Show golf tournament. It's going to be held at Coral Creek. For any information, go to ThinkTech Hawaii, INC, and friend us. The PayPal and a summary of the event will be right there available for you. And don't forget to tweet us.
Okay, we're back, we're live. We're here with Gauri Khandekar of FRIDE in Brussels. She joins us by Skype, and we call the show Midnight in Brussels because she stays up late, and we really, really appreciate that. And we've been talking about bailing out Greece, troisième, and by the way, troisième, which is spoken spoken universally in Brussels, means the third time, if you didn't catch that. Can't lapse too much into French here. But I wanted to, I wanted to just point out a connection and get your reaction as a sort of an analyst on this sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of midnight oilism, where everybody hits the paper and they say, "Oh, we're about to make a deal. We almost made the deal. Just a few little things, we'll make the deal." And and somebody locks the door, and Angela Merkel says, "You can't go home. We have to have this deal." And and the world is watching, and the public relations community, the media watching so carefully to see that the deal is made. And they all have their own philosophical reasons for wanting that. Same time, in the same days and weeks, we have to deal with Iran. And I guess the White House really wants to have that deal. I mean, people will differ, and Congress may differ about whether that deal is really good. And we seem to get closer and closer, but nobody knows the actual details that we seem to be hung up on. Maybe there'll be an article on that point in the next day or two, but you get closer. It's just an inch away. You can almost touch it. You can feel it, and the press is telling us it's going to happen. You'll see. Why are people so interested in doing midnightism, midnight oilism that way? How does that work on a sort of international public relations basis? If you were a public relations agent, would you be pushing to tell people to make them believe these deals are going to happen? Does that become a self-fulfilling prophecy? And is it because it makes you look good? What's your thought about that?
Well, I think it would be paying my job, right?
There you go.
Of course, it pays.
That's the first thing. Yeah.
All these international developments pay so many people's jobs, from news reporters to, analysts like myself, to so many people. I mean, and just keeping the discussion going forever and ever is, what else is there in life?
Slow news day. Yes, slow news day. So we make the news by making the deal.
But this week I was thinking that I think it's been exactly 2,500 years, more or less, that Greece and Iran dominated global headlines. Don't you? So it's really, they're back in the news big time, and it's all about these deals. Let's clinch the deal. Oh well, no, it didn't, and it's like a game of sport in a way, and you don't get that feeling of accomplishment. I honestly think that nobody wants that feeling of accomplishment, just to keep something going, If it's not one, it's the other. And, I think ISIS is a bit too bloody for our taste, and nobody's following that at the moment. And, other countries, I mean, no, these are just the right, they're the Goldilocks perfect kind of mantras, That's the kind of crisis we want, handleable, but, they can keep the tension at their right spot. Sorry, I'm joking about these things.
This leads me, the whole discussion, it leads me to my theory of, 1 second. Get so excited I lost my microphone. It leads me to my theory of distraction, okay?
Yeah.
So, you have a channel of news, you have a channel of priorities, the things that everyone seems to agree are very important. But, everyone knows the public is fickle, and the public, and I mean the global public, the public really doesn't stay on track for very long because it gets bored. If you kept on reporting, for example, this unmade agreement with Greece for another, 2 months, people would be zoning on that. They couldn't stand it anymore. And I guess ISIS is the same. You can only tolerate so much of it. And I suppose that's true in the case of Iran, the Iran deal. So what happens is it gets old. And when it gets old, and sometimes things get old real quick, when it gets old, something else comes up. Not unmindful. I mean, so the guy in the corner, he says, well, the thing about Greece is pretty old already. Let's see what we got today. We have an opportunity here. Let's distract the global public with something new.
I agree with with you. I agree with you. And the other thing, the other reason behind distracting them is also to, get their attention off things that really need attention. For example, development. The development summit is coming up. Or climate change. I mean, that's really something that affects us existentially. Not the Greek deal, not the Iran deal, but climate change. That's something that, could kill us really. And I just read yesterday that water levels have risen by 6 feet, I think. Yeah, 6 feet. That's quite a lot. Or is it 6 meters? Sorry for not being accurate.
Whatever,
but,
I mean, a material number, yeah.
And that is still scary. And that's, detracting attention from either those things that really matter or those things that, that are too important or not. You're right. I agree with your theory.
Yeah, so the question, and here's a big question for somebody in the think tank who I can compare notes with. We have this great opportunity, it's pure. And so how do you actually govern the world if you want to retain, you want to keep it in mind, keep it in memory, not be distracted? How do you do that? Is it a question of good leadership? Is it a question of dealing somehow with the media? Is it a question of appealing to the public relations community? How do you avoid the distraction and remember every day that we have climate change, every single day, and every day that we have to do development and maintain good economics? How do you do that?
Jay, I'm sorry, I'm going to give you a very non-think tanker opinion, but it's really my own. And these are my very thoughts. I honestly think that nobody has a clue of where they're going, what we're doing. Because if we really did, we would be handling our situation much better. We'd be creating much better societies. Everybody is just thinking in the moment, and that's what kind of most leaders are doing. Thinking about national interests, a very limited geographical interest, but I don't think anybody knows where they're going. I mean, people keep making mistakes. The Greek crisis has gone on for years, Somebody had a good idea, they would have solved it. U.S. government keeps on making mistakes as well, and so do other governments. And we just create things like financial bubbles or whatever, what is the need to create these? We could have had a smarter system. So I honestly think nobody has a great idea, and we're just muddling through.
Muddling through, all of us, all billions of us muddling through. This takes me to one other thought, one other theory, and then I have one last question for you, and that is the mammalian theory. So one can never forget that all of us are mammals. And mammals are not necessarily driven by rationality. There you go. It's the same thing that you were saying.
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. We have consensus here.
So the last question I have for you is what's your next article? What's your next project? What have you been thinking and reading and writing about lately?
Oh my God, there's so much, Jay. Really, my work is inundated at the moment. My desk is inundated, and so is my laptop almost. So I'm working on a paper on Russia, how Asian countries view the Russia-Ukraine conundrum and what it means for the EU and the West. That's one. Then I'm doing a chapter on Japan and India relations. I'm editing a book on Japan's security strategic partnerships, and that will be for Routledge. I'm doing another book on the Asia-Europe meeting, and the things go on. I'm also working for the European Union on a twinning mission, so I'm quite busy at the moment.
There you have it, and it's no surprise that Gauri is no stranger to staying up late at night, yeah?
Yeah, I'm burning the midnight oil.
Gauri Khandekar of FRIDE in Brussels, Midnight in Brussels, Bailing Out Greece, Troisième, and much more. Thank you so much, Gauri. We'll see you in 2 weeks, yes?
Thank you so much for having me, and see you à la prochaine.
Okay. Take care.